Welcome back to Captives Over Cocktails or Coffee Over Cocktails today, where we break down alternative funding strategies with a twist. Today's episode is a special one. We're diving into a topic that's really close to both Lydia's and my hearts with Memorial Day coming up. We're going to talk about veteran mental health and how the current system is not doing enough. So I'm joined by Lydia, who not only brings deep industry knowledge, but also a personal connection to this issue.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So as we look at Memorial Day this coming weekend, it serves as a solemn reminder of the sacrifices made by military personnel in service to this nation, many of which grappled with invisible wounds long after their service had ended. So coinciding with Mental Health Awareness Month, this time of year offers a very powerful opportunity to shed some light on mental health challenges faced by veterans, including PTSD, depression, and anxiety. So recognizing and addressing these issues is not only a matter of public health, it's a moral obligation to honor their service with the support and with the care that they deserve. So today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We want to call time for reflection, awareness, and action to ensure that those that served are not forgotten once their uniforms come off. Ashley, I know you experienced some of this firsthand, so do you mind sharing with us your story?
Yeah, Memorial Day has always carried weight for me and my family. I grew up on Fort Bragg, actually, surrounded by service. My grandfather was in the Navy. My father was a Green Beret. My brother was in the Navy, and actually my former partner. So all military. I've seen the pride, the discipline, the sacrifice, but I've also seen the cost. My former partner served in 2 wars as a Marine. He fought very bravely overseas, but the battle really didn't end when he came home. And actually, for me, it started when he came home. The transition out of the military without the right resources, without real support, was brutal on us. PTSD took its toll, and eventually it took his life. So his struggle was really heartbreaking, and it affected both of us in ways I still carry. His family and I are incredibly close still. Our families are very intertwined, but it still lives with us kind of every day as kind of like a shadow behind us. So yeah, I've watched my family members fight to reintegrate, all of them, and rebuild their sense of purpose, to find themselves again after service. And so today and this weekend, I remember those who never made it home and those who made it back but were forever changed. So this day is for all of them. And Monday is, I suppose it's not today, but yeah, and every day, truly. I mean, I live it every day. So Memorial Day is a great reminder, but every day. So let's talk about what's not working for them. Traditional mental health coverage in most benefit plans is still pretty broken. I know that we're getting there. There's a lot of movement in the industry right now, but especially when it comes to serving this kind of subpopulation of veterans. On paper, it might look like there's access to care, but in reality, it's often limited networks, long wait lists, and generic solutions that don't address the complexity of what many veterans are actually dealing with.
Exactly. And I think that even when veterans do have coverage, whether it's through an employer plan or even dual coverage with the VA, they're still facing a different set of challenges. And it's not about just finding a therapist. It's about finding the right one, someone that understands trauma, PTSD, or even just the culture from which they are coming back and integrating back in. So it's not easy when networks are this narrow.
Yeah, my mom's actually a trauma therapist, and so she deals with a lot of veterans, and she's out of network, and we'll get into that. But the VA, like I experienced bringing Peyton to the VA, and they shoved a lot of pills, a lot of really quick solutions, and tried to get us back on out the weight room because there's so many people and just not enough infrastructure and coverage there in terms of the VA. So, and let's be honest, like most EAPs, in terms of when they transition into a commercial health plan with an employer, most EAPs are kind of a checkbox, right? Like you get 5 sessions, maybe a hotline. But for someone struggling with like really deep trauma or reintegration anxiety, that's barely a starting point. Plus, the stigma is still really real, like especially in workplace settings where taking time off for mental health can still feel like a weakness or worse, career risk, especially to them. They're trying to reintegrate, they're trying to prove they can do something, asking for that time off because they need it, especially to someone who they're also prideful, right? Like that seems like such a weakness for them.
Right, absolutely. And we can't ignore the logistical barriers either, right? So there are provider shortages across the board, especially in rural areas.
Yeah.
So veterans often live outside of major metro areas. So
Yep.
finding in-network mental health professionals can be a logistical nightmare. And I think the system just isn't designed for that kind of consistent, culturally competent care that's needed for our veterans.
Yeah. I mean, even if they have like a steady job in insurance, they're often falling through the cracks. And that's the disconnect that we want kind of to highlight. So, mental health support exists in theory, but in
Mhm.
practice, it feels fragmented, underfunded, and really far from personalized.
Right.
But we're not just here to complain about the system, right? So we can shift into solutions because this isn't just about what's broken, it's about what's
Right.
possible when employers start to rethink benefit design with empathy and strategy. That's obviously like one of the foundations of our captive. And what we lead with at ClearPoint is that empathetic solutions around healthcare, because behind every healthcare decision is an actual human. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest mindset shifts we're advocating for is that trauma informed care. So that means designing benefits with the understanding that trauma is more common than most people think outside of veterans. And that system should meet people where they are and not the other way around.
yep. And that starts with real access. So, not just in network therapists who might have a 3 month wait list.
Right.
Employers can cover out of network mental health providers. Like you can make that change in your plan, especially when the in network options are limited or lack specialty training. It's a small tweak with a massive impact. I was talking to my mom about this morning when we were talking about, like I said, insurance and trauma care and all
Mhm.
that. And she said, well, most veterans also, in addition to their health insurance through like their commercial provider, have TRICARE, which is the military's version of like out of.
Right.
But they don't accept it. Most therapists don't accept it because
Mhm.
it's difficult to get approved on. It doesn't pay a lot. So it's almost like doing like, charity work or like, again, my mom was saying like, I couldn't even get approved. Like the wait list was so long. So
Right.
changing that access to care by saying, yes, we are going to cover out of network mental health providers as kind of a more in network benefit, that flips the script. Like it opens up the floodgates for options for those veterans.
Absolutely. And I think another big one is more sessions and fewer restrictions. So we hear
Yep.
about plans that cap therapy to 10, 12 times a year. And for a veteran managing PTSD or depression, that is nowhere nearly enough. And I think that employers can fund plans that allow for ongoing care and not just crisis response. Because talking to a therapist once a month when you are dealing with the
Yeah.
PTSD, the depression, the trauma, they need more service. They need more time in therapy.
Yeah, I would have liked to think that if Peyton had access to someone whenever he needed it, then maybe that would have changed the outcome for us.
Right.
And culturally competent care is key, whether that's like peer support groups, access to veteran specific counselors, or even apps designed with service members in mind. So, again, like if he had someone he could call right then, employers can help fund those programs that feel safe, relatable, and effective. They really do not. They feel like a group, like outside of when they all kind of go to reintegrate. They still feel outside of the rest of society. I remember one of the
Right.
first things Peyton said to me in its first job that he got outside of. He came back and he goes, "No one understands." He was like, "They're all
Mhm.
just sitting there, like putting boxes on a conveyor belt. It was like a factory." And he's like,
Right.
and they're 19 and like I've gone to war and like I'm just sitting here putting boxes on a conveyor belt and like they
Right.
have no idea like who I am really, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, they're not going to.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I think the problem with that most veterans
yeah.
feel and face with that reintegration. And that's why, talking about therapy a few minutes ago, just having someone to talk to that understands and that can help walk them through that feeling, because it's so hard. He's sitting there doing the same job as someone that hasn't experienced what he's been experiencing. And
Yeah.
so I think that, tying this into captives,
Yeah.
you look at traditional fully insured plans, they're rarely going to allow for this kind of flexibility. But
Yeah.
when an employer is in a captive, they can use their pooled resources and their underwriting control to really test out and fund solutions that actually work. So things like mental health navigation, enhanced EAPs, or even direct contracts with veteran care providers, because captives are going to give that employer the platform to innovate without waiting on the carrier to catch up, or without just taking that fully insured off the shelf plan.
Yeah, like imagine a veteran talking to a therapist that was a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Like game changer, right? For that kind of understanding. So yeah, it's about using your benefit dollars to actually support people. That's what I love about benefits and captives and this self-insurance kind of space, is that you're not just ticking boxes on a spreadsheet. And the ROI on that isn't just emotional, it's financial too. So healthier employees mean fewer absences, lower claims costs, better retention. When mental health is addressed up front, the ripple effects kind of throughout your company are real. So not just saying, well, we support veterans. Like, I mean, everyone can do that, but this actually gives you a chance to impact your organization, impact the people within your organization. So, all right, before we close, let's do a quick fire round. First thing that comes to mind for me is, what's one myth about mental health benefits that absolutely needs to go?
That EAPs are enough, or that people won't use it if you build it.
Good point. They definitely would use it if you built it. All right, love it. Okay, what's the best way for a broker or an employer to start this conversation with a client who's maybe never thought about it through a veteran lens?
Yeah, so I think they really need to ask if their plan supports access, not just coverage. And those are two different words, access and coverage. So if they support access and not just coverage.
Yep, I think those are good
Mm-hmm.
conversation starters. And I think
Yeah.
that starts with brokers considering this as well, right?
Yes.
Employers probably won't think of it on their own. There's so many other things to think about. And I don't even know that they know they can do this, that you
Right.
can make these changes. And so a broker being an advocate for this as well, and companies like ours and you and I being advocates and
Yeah.
getting the word out there, I think that's critically important. So
Yeah,
good.
and I think too, just to add,
Yeah.
I live in an area where there's a massive military base. And
Yeah.
so you have benefit advisors. And I live in an area where a lot of people that are in the military come back to retire to. It's suburbia, it's Midwest. And so I think that starts with the benefit advisor when they're talking to their client or prospect, really bringing up and being sensitive to the fact that there are probably and most likely veterans that are working. And so they really need to be cognizant. Like I said, the conversation maybe doesn't start with the employer, right? The conversation needs to start with the benefit advisor taking that lead and taking the initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we head into Memorial Day weekend, I just want to pause and say thank you to all who have served and to the
Yes.
families who support them. They're equally as a difficult job. This episode was really about rethinking what we're funding in our benefit plans and who we're building them for. So if you've got veterans in your workforce, like Lydia said, or your clients' workforce, this matters. They deserve more than surface level solutions. And the captive model gives us room to innovate, and self-funding does kind of traditionally as well, and to actually create benefit strategies that support mental health with purpose and empathy. So Lydia, thank you again for
Yeah,
joining me this morning and sharing this
absolutely.
space.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you,
Awesome.
Ashley.
Okay. We'll see you on the next episode, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.